the time I'm recording this, the official lineup, sponsors, and manufacturers for every single is out. And let's just sort of discuss it. So up first, we have got last year's reigning world champions, Drake. Unsurprisingly, 2-all, they have kept their exact same lineup. Connor Nixon, Andrew Bavignou and Louis Cordova, of course. Nixon doing very well in the endurance, finished 7th, and of course Cordova and Bavignou finished 4th and 7th. They won the constructors by about 21 points, so they did fairly well. They have kept their partnership with BMW, although expectations would suggest, of course, due to the new balance of performance rules, which means the BMW will be 30 kg heavier, they've got a bit less ambitious. They've gone for Repsol and OPMP, who are predicted then to come 6th or 8th, which is interesting to see that Drake perhaps not quite as confident. And that is interesting. I would discuss why they might not be as confident, because the BMW lineup for this year has been completely thrown out the window, but they've still got most of the team from last year. Drake should have a solid season. I'd be shocked if they weren't in the top 5. But of course, we're yet to be seen how other teams may progress. Of course, Honda have looked an interesting project. Audi have got some decent teams. Volkswagen don't look as strong this year, so Drake could have an easier time. But then again, we don't really know if Audi could be resurgent. But I would be shocked if they can't get into the top 5 with 3 very good drivers and, on theory, the best car on the grid. But obviously, we won't know that until pre-season testing. Next up, Dufar had a very disappointing season last year, and they have made a couple of changes. So Benjamin Madison, who was a underperforming star of last season, did well in the endurance and has impressed new team principal Sander Kovacs to keep his endurance seat. Ezio de Bonaventura will drive in that car, but also alongside him, it is Buddy Darmawan. Of course, Buddy Darmawan, you may know, finished 8th in the endurance series last year, of course, so proven to do it fairly well. He is the 29-year-old Indian. On paper, he is about on a par with Benjamin Madison stat-wise. The only thing is he's got a better reputation, so I suppose maybe too far put Benjamin down to endurance for the commercial reasons. We know that Bonaventura is costing them $250K on wage, so perhaps they need to shift the line up to get that rep up and get better sponsors. And on paper, it would appear as if they've done that. They have managed to get Sharp and Netflix with expectations of 7th and 8th. Of course, Netflix paying them $387K per race, and Sharp $381K a week. So it would appear as if Duval have got fairly good sponsors. However, the one concerning thing for them is that they have stuck with the Audi. Now, that may not seem like a bad thing. Of course, loyalty. I do believe they've been with them since season 1, but I could be wrong. However, that Audi did not look great, but it didn't get penalised. It was one of the 2 teams manufacturers that didn't get penalised. The other was Honda, which has looked a project. Expectations would suggest that expecting another quiet year. I think Dufar should just scrape into the top 10. I'm going to go about 9th to 11th for Dufar. I think Bonaventura may get a win or 2, but I'm not convinced by Darmawan as a driver in comparison to Madison. And that Audi, I mean, the teams they've got for this year, it just does not look promising. Next up, Envy, who of course come into this off the back of frustrating season 2, where they had Wolfgang Weissen bottle the title, and their second car just couldn't keep up. So it was somewhat of a minor miracle. They managed to get 5th in the constructors in the end. They have decided that they will stay with Volkswagen team principal Hey Jacobs. Was very pleased to keep that around. Now, there has been some driver maneuvers. We were wondering whether Liam Henry would maybe stay around and after, he put in some decent performances in Bahrain, but sadly he has not kept his seat. Envy have decided to bring in S.A. Munat in, who, if I go to the Season 2 hub and look at the standings, you'll see S.A. Munat, of course, won last year's Endurance Championship when driving for, where is it? Upside Down. who are now in Division 2. So on paper, that's a positive sign, but also we don't know what Moonat is going to be capable of in that kind of regard. It is interesting they've got 5 drivers. No, they haven't. They've only got 3. I'm dumb. As for their endurance driver, well, obviously last year it was in the end a bit of a mix-up, but in the end this year they have gone with Manion Dion, who was, I do believe, unemployed for season. Oh no, they ran twice in the endurance series and didn't really achieve much. And on paper, looks a decent driver on paper, but performances last year perhaps would suggest that could be a desperate signing. Vyson has stayed on though, which is encouraging, but SA Munat is on a fat 220k a week, and given we already know Envy, not the richest team on the grid, there is perhaps the doubt that they might be running into a negative here, but they have got finances from Valvoline who want 4 for hire, and D2 who have gone 8 for hire, so again a bit of uncertainty perhaps surrounding that balanced performance, with Volkswagen going up 20 kg. Envy should have a solid season. I think they should get top 7, but based on what I've seen, Dion maybe needs to prove themselves. Moonat needs to adjust to non-endurance racing, and sponsors would suggest that perhaps Jack's off not quite as confident as what last season would have it to believe. Next up, we move on to perhaps one of the more interesting teams of pre-season. Of course, Esther were the 3rd best BMW, so many people, including me, I was dead certain they were going to stay with BMW, but they've actually made a very bold decision. Alfa Gio announcing that they had gone to Volkswagen, and they've got Trafroa and Tag Heuer as their sponsors, so they are fairly confident of a good showing with 4 for 6 higher. However, last season, of course, their main concern wasn't the car, it was the drivers. Reduced onto track, they have kept both of them, and they have kept young endurance driver Cornel Sava, which may not seem too bad until you realise they've upgraded their pay massively. Sava staying on 150k, but Perez is on. Okay, so that stays the same, but it would appear as if perhaps they think their drivers were capable of better. I think Esther might slip up. I think Volkswagen this year doesn't look quite as good. I think they'll possibly get top 8, but I think Esther could be the surprise forwards. Next up, we got a new team. Of course, we had Baltica in last year with Adrian Diego. They got relegated. Ice Rock, however, announced that they were pulling out of the series, and so HRT Touring bought out the team, and they've kept their foundations, and they have announced that they've got big ambitions. They are confident in the Audi, with Disney and Beko sponsoring them, who want 3rd or 5th or higher. So big moves there by Adrian Diego, confident that the Audi can bounce back from a massive flop in Season 2. It's going to be interesting to see if this potential reinforced belief. They have obviously kept the lineup that Icerock had last year of Ramirez, Hackinson and Boucher. It proved to be a decent lineup, but now the question is, going from a Renault to the Audi, will that be a step up, and is that going to be ultimately good enough for a top 5? I don't think so. I think HRT Touring are going to stay firmly in the bottom half, and I think they are going to get absolutely screwed reputation-wise. Next up, we have Ironside. There was big rumours that they might be joining Honda. Sadly, they missed out in the absolute carnage that was the bidding war. So after Esther left to go to Volkswagen, it was a no-brainer to stick with BMW, and unsurprisingly, Ryanair and eBay have been announced as their sponsors. 4 for hire looks a decent opposition. I think Ironside should go well. I think they should get top 5 with what they have. Obviously, they did lose Lixiner. They've replaced him with Ji Yu, who of course was struggling at Stoffel Autosport in that cursed second car. Interesting to see if the Chinese driver can bounce back. And they have also appointed Danker Crown in as endurance driver. Now, Danker Crown didn't race in Series 2. But if you actually have a look at them on paper, this could be a good move there. Ironside, a young up-and-coming 23-year-old female driver. She looks fairly solid across the board on a fat 140k a week, so costing a fair chunk, but she should go well. And looks like everything really is in place for Ironside to have a very solid season. Next up, and this is the other team change, Peregrine Performance have KISS Motorsport rebranded themselves now as Peregrine Performance. Jolly 3 has announced, and after a couple of openings opened up, they have announced that they have stolen the seat at Volkswagen. They have kept the exact same dodgy driver lineup of Debian Dye and Charlotte Thompson, who are both quick, but both probably unhindered by the slow Chevrolet, and to be fair, a lack of consistency, and they've kept Konstantin Ashachenkov, if I said that right, I want you to subscribe, as endurance driver, who did impress prior to a disappointing round at the Nordschleife. In fact, I think they retired that day. But prior to that, they scored 38 points to the Chevrolet, which is not bad. So they should go well stepping up to the Volkswagen, trying to bank Traction Bank and Slime backing up. It will 4th or 6th or higher would suggest as well. There was a decent bit of confidence from Johnny 3 that step up to the Volkswagen too. I think it will be a step up for KISS, but I'm going to go around about 6th to 9th. But I think they'll languor in the midfield. I just don't think the activeness of that Volkswagen team. We know last season it has come out that Volkswagen were being carried by both John Plastics and Ethan Ivers. They've both left to go to Honda, so that's 2 key personnel out of that Volkswagen team. I think development, I think at the start of the season, Volkswagen will do quite well, but I think as the rest of the year goes on and other teams become more active and they start upgrading more and more, I think Volkswagen are going to drop away, whereas last season they started off slowly but got better. I think it's going to be the opposite this year. I think Debbie Dye or Charlotte Thompson will win a race in the first 5 rounds, but after that it's going to be a slog, and they're going to quickly drop down the order, similar to what Audi did last year. And next up, it is, of course, my team, Leicester Motorsport, of course, by me, Joseph Leicester. We are pleased to announce we managed to get the Honda. Considering OMW paid quite well, and obviously this is a project, so taking it for hire is fine. Also, with Fernandino Corleone as drivers, I think that's a very solid lineup from us. I've got Amir Iskander. He's a veteran of the game. He knows what to do in an endurance car. Should go quite well there. I think this year, if we can aim for a top half finish, preferably inside the top 8, well, that'll be quite good. Next up, Nürburgring, who of course drove for Honda last year, and it has come out that they were pretty much the only team bothering with that one. Of course, they've pretty much become a Hungarian team. There was rumours that they might stay with Honda, or they might go to Renault, but in the end, they have gone to Audi. Alexander Vaca has confirmed they've kept last year's Hungarian lineup of Paul Balashin and Laszlo Sharbo, who, after some iffy performances, won in Bahrain, of course, and they have signed James Smith up as endurance driver. As far as I'm aware, is a newcomer to the sport, because I don't see him. Yeah, 16-year-old, loaned in from Platinum as an endurance driver. The 16-year-old has a rating of around about 40, so it looks like this year will just be Platinum's loaning him out for, loaning him out for experience. Interesting to see if the young 16-year-old can make a name for himself, of course. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. They have, however, looked fairly dour in their predictions, only 11th or higher with both Dover and Under Armour. I think this year it's going to be a struggle for Nürburgring. I don't think they'll go down. I think that'll be Tubergian, but I just think it's going to be a struggle. They'll end up about 12th to 13th, staying up just. But I'm going to go Paul Balashin to run an absolute worldie and win 2 races. I just think Sharbo and Smith is a weak combination for the rest of the points. Next up, Platinum. There was, of course, a lot of speculation about who would get that 3rd Honda seat after it was confirmed that both Stoffel Autosport and my team, Leicester Motorsport, were getting it. It was with Envy, Ironside, or Nürburgring, all could get it. There was even rumours that Dufar may well take it up, but in the end, it was John Cloud and Platinum who really weren't linked with it at all, but they came from the clouds and absolutely stole that seat. Of course, helped last year by their endurance, probably not helped by the fact that the Volkswagen wasn't quite as competitive as they may have wanted at times, and also Nikolaev and Singh proved inconsistent. They've gone with Pizza Hut and Cisco for 4th or higher, so fairly ambitious John Cloud is in this Honda. They've kept their driver lineup of Nikolaev, Singh and Kennedy. Singh showed promise towards the end of last year. If Nikolaev can stay out the barriers, she should have a solid campaign. Archie Kennedy should do his bits as an endurance driver. I think it's all set in place for Platinum with the help of Kennedy to get a top 6 finish in the constructors' standings. So we are coming towards the end of it. We've got 4 more teams to discuss, and of course we've got Pretoria, who have reigning world champion Ildefonso Mendes. They've stuck with the BMW. It's a no-brainer there for Santanel, of course, after winning the constructors last year. Not the constructors, after winning the drivers' championship. There was no real reason to switch, and there was perhaps rumours that Pretoria, we know that a BMW team would be leaving, but in the end it was confirmed that would actually be Esther. They have gone with Autosport to finish third or higher, but if that BMW doesn't quite go as well, they have got a backup plan with Microsoft. And sixth or higher, they kept Mendes and Firmino as their endurance drive, as their full-time drivers. And they have kept Dorota Becki, the young Hungarian, in as endurance driver. I think Becki will cost them any chance for constructors, but I think this is all set in place for another top 4 finish by Pretoria. I think they've got a very strong foundation, and I can't see a reason why they wouldn't get involved. Moving on to Rosal, probably one of the teams people care the least about this year. No offense to Rosal, but they just don't really look at exciting projects. Nikolai Shermarodov ran for board member, of course, but was unable to get there, and the expectations are low, with Tissot being the main sponsor with 10th work for hire, and the backup sponsor being Canon, 10th for hire. Sid van der Leen has kept his seat as driver number 1 with Jordi Azcona, the Spaniard, who, if I look to the Season 2 hub, was a free agent, I do believe. I will check that now. That is correct. Yes. Cool. The 21-year-old has come in, looks a fairly average driver on paper, and they've got Yuri Kuznetsov as the endurance driver, who of course replaces Jonathan Wilson from last year. Could be an interesting move for the 28-year-old, who again looks okay on paper, but let's be honest, it probably isn't set up for a good season. Hindered again by that, well, I just think this is going to be a slog for Rosal. I don't think they'll go down, but I'll make a bet here. If Rosal win a race this season, I will delete my channel, because it's just not happening. Stoffel Autosport, they were of course the main funding for that Honda project, and Ethan Ivers playing a bit cautious perhaps, with Fidanza 10th for hire as the main sponsor, and Joe Kasama the secondary sponsor with 6th for hire. They've of course kept Angelino Torres. They have, however, taken Roman Lichtsteiner, who proved to be a solid driver for the Ironside team last year, in second as their second driver, and Sarah Rosebacken is the endurance driver, who of course stays with Stoffel Autosport after impressing and finishing 5th last year and helping Stoffel Autosport into 6th place in the end. I think it's still set in place for Stoffel Autosport to have a very strong year, probably get inside the top 5, and Angelino Torres might even be a potential dark horse for the Drivers' Championship. And last but not least, well, it's going to be it's going to be the team who's going to be finishing last in the Drivers' Championship, Terbergian. We know they have financial issues. They've brought in Thibaut Hazard, who of course got sacked from Stoffel Autosport in Season 1. Hector Rodriguez has proved to be an expensive burden. Jerome Mathers is their only hope of getting anywhere. That Renault has been handicapped to death. Whether an A-Gip 12th or better would suggest this Terbergian team are just hoping and praying they don't get relegated. Lane Terbergian has expressed his frustrations at the financial status. They have no reputation. Terbergian almost 97% a dead cert to go down this season. So that wraps all that up. As for who I think wins the constructors, it's quite an open race, but I'm going to have to go perhaps just on the strength of what they've got at their disposal. I will have to go for Drake. I think expectations might be a red herring. They've got Bamier, they've got Cordova. Nixon's a very good endurance driver. If that BMW doesn't get handicapped to death, they are the obvious pick to win it. As for the dark horse for the title, I tell you what, I will not rule out Stoffel Autosport. Of course, we know that Honda project is going to be getting massively funded. We know that Torres and Lichtsteiner are very good drivers. We know Rosebacken is a good endurance driver. If that Honda proves to be competitive, as rumours may have it think, then Stoffel Autosport could be the dark horse. As for who I think is going down, I think it will be Terbergian. If not Terbergian, then probably Rosal. And if not Rosal, then probably Nürburgring, let's be honest. As for who I think wins the drivers, that's a bit more of a tough question. I don't think we're going to see a reigning world champion. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring here. I just wonder if this is set up for an upset. What if, call me mental on this, Ironside, Edvard Christopherson, a consistent driver, couple of doubts, but we know Ironside are a solid team. Could Edvard Christopherson be the dark horse for the title? As for who I think going to win the title, well, I've got Drake winning the constructors, and therefore I'm going to go with the better of their two drivers, Louis Cordova, as my selection to win the Season 3 Drivers' Championship. That's what I've got down. Let me know your thoughts. That's just me discussing the news, the teams, all of that stuff. And if I've tipped your team, please don't come to my house and kill me. I am aware my reputation is dreadful.